Here on our channel, we believe stories should feel real, told with care, passion, and a human touch. No synthetic shortcuts. No lifeless narration. Because HFY only works when humanity is at its core. If that's what you're here for, make sure you're subscribed. For centuries, the armor stood in silence. It rested at the center of the Galactic Archive Hall, inside a field of blue light. Tall pillars surrounded it, covered in ancient marks no one could fully read. Surrounded it, etched with ancient symbols no living species could decipher. The air around the armor felt heavy, watchful, as if the relic itself was aware of every soul who passed before it. Every species in the galaxy knew its name, the untouchable armor. No one remembered who built it. Some believed it was forged by an ancient race that had vanished before recorded history. Others claimed it was never built at all, that it had grown, evolved, become sentient over millennia. What everyone agreed upon was simple and absolute. No alien could wear it. Over time, the galaxy surrendered its hope. The armor became a legend. A warning. A mystery locked away in the archive hall, waiting for a candidate worthy of its power. Until the day humans arrived. The Galactic Council chamber was full. Leaders from dozens of species, some floating in anti-gravity harnesses, others perched on crystalline thrones, fixed their attention on the archive hall below. Holographic screens displayed star charts and sensor data, but no one cared about routine matters today. A council elder spoke first, his voice calm but heavy with exhaustion. We have tried everything. Strength failed. Knowledge failed. Time failed. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Another voice followed, sharp, amused, dripping with contempt. And now we are expected to believe that humans will succeed? Laughter spread through the hall. Humans were newcomers to the galactic stage, small, soft, fragile. No claws. No thick hide. No natural weapons. Compared to the armored Dravik or the telepathic Valori, they were laughably weak. Yet at the far end of the hall, a single human stood waiting. His name was Elias Ward. He wore simple clothing, no armor, no weapons. His hands hung empty at his sides. His expression betrayed no fear, only quiet focus. He did not speak. He only watched the armor. Why send only one? A reptilian commander demanded. Is this some kind of insult? The human ambassador replied evenly. He asked to go alone. More laughter. The council elder raised a weathered hand. Enough. Let this be recorded. One final attempt. Then this matter is closed forever. The energy field around the armor flickered and lowered. Elias began to walk. Each step echoed through the silent hall. Hundreds of eyes tracked his movements, some curious, some mocking, some uneasy. As he drew closer, the station's sensors began to spike. Lights flickered overhead. A low hum vibrated through the floor. The scientist noticed first. That's impossible, one whispered, eyes locked on her instruments. The armor has never reacted to proximity before. Elias stopped an arm's length from the relic. The armor stood taller than him, dark metal layered with faint geometric lines. It looked ancient but not damaged, dormant but not dead. He took a slow breath. Behind reinforced glass, warning alarms began to flash. Step back, a guard shouted. You don't know what it will. Elias raised his hand. Not in challenge. Not in command. Just calm. He reached forward and placed his fingers against the cold metal. The hall fell silent. The blue light vanished. The hum stopped. For one long, breathless moment, nothing happened. Then the armor awakened. Metal shifted like living tissue. Lines across its surface ignited, white and gold, tracing patterns no observer had ever witnessed. Symbols materialized, spiraling around Elias's hand, moving with deliberate intelligence. Energy surged through the chamber. Shields activated. Guards drew weapons. Council members rose in shock. He should be dead, someone shouted. But Elias remained standing. His hand still rested on the armor. The relic had not rejected him, had not attacked him. Instead, it seemed to lean toward him, as if listening. Elias closed his eyes. For the first time in centuries, the untouchable armor had chosen to respond. A deep sound resonated through the hall, not an alarm, not a warning. A signal. Ancient systems across the station powered on. Screens flooded with unknown script. Machines dormant for millennia stirred from sleep. The council elder's voice trembled. It's choosing. The armor's chest plate began to part. Light poured from within. Plates shifted and reformed, slowly encircling the human who had dared to reach out. Elias did not move. He did not run. He did not fight. He stood still as history rewrote itself around him. Then a voice echoed through the chamber, ancient, vast, and impossibly calm. Candidate confirmed. The galaxy held its breath. The bond was instant and overwhelming. As the armor's energy merged with Elias, the archive hall disappeared. He found himself floating in an infinite void, a landscape of shifting metal mountains and rivers of molten light that defied physics. This was no physical space. This was a construct of the armor's ancient mind. Images flooded his consciousness. Centuries of failed attempts, warriors burned to ash, scientists driven mad, civilizations that had staked everything on claiming the armor's power, and lost. The armor was not merely testing strength. It was measuring something far more elusive. A voice resonated in his mind. Prove your intent. Survive. Show the mind that commands strength. Shadows rose from the void, manifestations of every challenger who had failed before him. They moved with predatory grace, each one representing a different fear, a different weakness that had destroyed those who came before. The first shadow lunged. Fast, jagged, unpredictable. Elias did not attack. He observed. He let the shadow's momentum carry it past him, then repositioned with calculated precision. Every instinct screamed at him to fight, to dominate, but he understood that aggression had been the downfall of every alien who had stood here before. The armor was not seeking a warrior. It was seeking a mind. More shadows came, each faster than the last, each carrying echoes of failure, screams of the fallen, visions of civilizations crumbling, the weight of galactic expectation pressing down like a physical force. Elias moved through the chaos with terrible patience. He did not fight blindly. He anticipated. He chose his moments with surgical clarity. Sweat ran down his face. Exhaustion clawed at the edges of his focus. But his mind remained sharp. The shadows began to falter, recoiling from something they could not comprehend, a being who refused to meet violence with violence. Then came the final test. A massive form rose from the molten river, a towering entity with 1,000 faces, each one belonging to a challenger who had died in this very trial. It spoke without sound, forcing visions of despair directly into Elias's mind. He saw himself fail. Again and again. He saw humanity rejected by the galaxy, cast aside as a primitive species unworthy of the stars. He felt the crushing weight of every doubt he had ever carried. Most would have crumbled. Most would have surrendered to rage or despair. Elias closed his eyes. He took a breath, and he remembered why he was here. Humanity had never been the strongest species. They had never been the smartest, the fastest, or the most advanced. But they had survived. Through ice ages and extinctions, through wars and plagues, through every catastrophe the universe had thrown at them, they had endured. Not through power, but through something the armor recognized as far more valuable. Adaptability. Patience. Oh. Elias stepped forward. The entity screamed, throwing its full weight against him. But he did not waver. He walked through the storm of shadow and despair with steady, deliberate steps. The entity stopped. It studied him for one eternal moment. Then it dissolved into golden particles that merged with the armor's light. The void vanished. Elias stood once again in the archive hall, the armor now seamlessly bonded to his form. No one in the chamber dared to speak. The armor's voice echoed through every mind present. Trial complete. Candidate surpasses all previous attempts. The council elder stepped forward, his ancient face pale. We underestimated them entirely. Elias met the watching eyes of every species in the chamber. When he spoke, his voice was calm but carried weight beyond its volume. We are not invincible. We are not perfect. But we endure. That is why the armor chose a human. Suddenly, alarms blared across the station. Not warnings of danger, alerts of activation. The armor's light connected with systems throughout the archive, awakening technology that had slept for millennia. The armor spoke one final time. The next trial begins. For the galaxy itself. The galaxy had not seen a threat like this in centuries. Reports flooded in from every sector. Star systems under siege, colonies vanishing without distress signals, entire fleets destroyed in minutes. The enemy moved faster than light-speed communications could track. They struck without warning and left nothing behind. The Galactic Council descended into chaos. Commanders shouted over each other. Analysts ran desperate calculations. Species that had warred for millennia now argued about temporary alliances. Fear spread faster than the enemy itself. At the center of the storm stood Elias Ward. The armor hummed against his skin, feeding him data no organic mind should comprehend. He could see the enemy's movements as patterns, threads of logic woven through chaos. Where the council saw random attacks, he saw strategy. Where they saw overwhelming force, he saw exploitable weaknesses. "They're testing us," he said quietly. The reptilian commander whirled on him. "Testing? They've destroyed 17 colony worlds. They're not testing, they're exterminating." "No." Elias studied the holographic display, watching enemy trajectories. "They're probing for responses, measuring reaction times, learning how we think." "Then what do you suggest, human? That we simply let them continue?" Elias turned to face the council. Every alien in the chamber fell silent. The armor's light pulsed slowly, almost hypnotically. "I suggest we stop giving them the responses they expect." The first test came 3 hours later. An enemy fleet, 40 vessels, each bristling with weapons beyond known technology, dropped out of hyperspace near Karath Prime. Population, 12 billion. The planet's defense grid activated, but everyone knew it wouldn't hold. Karath was a Dravik world, and their military doctrine relied on overwhelming firepower. Against an enemy this vast, they were helpless. The Dravik commander roared for reinforcements. His fleet moved to intercept, exactly as the enemy expected. "Pull them back," Elias said. The commander's scales flushed crimson. "You dare. Your ships will be destroyed in 18 minutes if they hold that formation. The enemy is baiting you into a crossfire. Pull them to coordinates 77 Mark III and wait. Wait? While my people die. Your people will live if you trust me." The silence stretched. The armor pulsed. On the holographic display, enemy vessels crept closer to their kill zone. The Dravik commander growled, but he gave the order. His fleet retreated to the specified coordinates. The enemy, expecting pursuit, found nothing. They adjusted, accelerating toward what they thought was a defenseless planet. They didn't see the human destroyers waiting in the asteroid belt. 12 ships. Small. Unimpressive by galactic standards. But when they struck, they moved with perfect coordination, not as individual vessels but as a single organism. They hit the enemy's flanks simultaneously, disrupting formation. They targeted propulsion systems, not weapons. They didn't try to destroy, they crippled. The enemy fleet, suddenly immobile and confused, became easy targets for the Dravik warships that swept in from their holding position. In 23 minutes it was over. 40 enemy vessels. 31 destroyed. 9 captured. 0 human casualties. Minimal Dravik losses. The council chamber was silent. Over the following weeks, the pattern repeated. Enemy fleets appeared. The council panicked. Elias analyzed, adapted, and directed. Victory followed victory, not through superior firepower but through anticipation, coordination, and the willingness to do what no alien species considered: waiting. The aliens began to understand. Humans didn't fight the way they did. They didn't rely on strength or speed or tradition. They watched. They learned. They found the gaps that others couldn't see. "It is as if they can see the future," a Valori strategist whispered during a debriefing. "They know where the enemy will strike before the enemy knows." "Not the future," Elias replied. "The pattern. Every enemy has one. You just have to be patient enough to find it." But patience had limits, and the enemy was learning too. The real test came at Thessera. It was a human colony, small, remote, and strategically insignificant. The enemy shouldn't have cared about it. But when their fleet appeared, it wasn't 40 vessels. It was 400. The largest force they had ever deployed. This wasn't a probe. This was a message. The council urged evacuation. Sacrifice the colony. Preserve the fleet for more important battles. It was sound military logic. Every alien species in the chamber agreed. Elias said nothing for a long moment. He stared at the holographic display, at the tiny blue dot that represented 50,000 human lives. Then he looked up. "We don't abandon our own." The armor blazed. Its light spread through the station systems, connecting Elias to every human vessel in range. He could feel them, their crews, their captains, their fear and their determination. They were outnumbered. They were outgunned. But they were human. The battle lasted 6 hours. Human ships wove through enemy formations like water through stone. They took impossible risks and made impossible escapes. They covered each other's retreats. They drew fire away from the evacuation transports. They bought time with their lives. Elias coordinated it all, his mind stretched across 1,000 simultaneous decisions. The armor fed him data until his consciousness blurred at the edges. He felt every ship that fell, every life that ended. But he didn't stop. When the last transport jumped to safety, when the last human had escaped Thessera, the remaining fleet regrouped. They had lost 37 ships. The enemy had lost 112. The aliens watched in stunned silence. They had expected the humans to break, to scatter, to save themselves. Instead, they had witnessed something they had never seen in centuries of galactic warfare, a species that fought not for territory or power but for each other. The council elder approached Elias as the battle reports scrolled across the screens. You lost 37 ships for one colony. Was it worth it? Elias met his gaze. Every one of those captains volunteered. They knew the cost, and they went anyway. But why? Elias looked toward the viewport, toward the distant stars. Because that's what we do. We hold the line. We protect what matters. And we never, ever abandon our people. The armor pulsed. Across the galaxy, human forces rallied. Word of Thessera spread, not as a defeat but as a declaration. Humanity would not break. Humanity would not bend. The enemy had wanted to send a message. So had humanity. The enemy stopped attacking. For 3 days their fleets held position at the edge of mapped space. No probes. No skirmishes. No communication. Just silence, vast and unsettling. The Galactic Council debated what it meant. Victory? Retreat? A trap? Theories multiplied, each more paranoid than the last. Elias knew the truth. The armor had shown him. They're recalculating, he told the council. They've never encountered a species like us. Their models don't account for what we did at Thessera. So we've won, the Valori ambassador asked hopefully. No, we've confused them. That's different. And it won't last. He was right. On the 4th day something changed. The enemy fleet didn't attack, it transmitted. A signal broadcast on every frequency in every known language. A single word repeated endlessly. Speak. The council erupted. Some called it a trap. Others demanded immediate response. A few suggested ignoring it entirely. Elias stood and walked toward the communication array. The armor hummed with anticipation. What are you doing? The reptilian commander demanded. They asked to speak. So I'm going to speak. He activated the channel before anyone could stop him. The response was immediate. A presence flooded the communication network, vast, ancient, and utterly alien. It didn't speak in words but in concepts, images, and emotions that crashed against Elias's consciousness like waves against a shore. The armor flared, shielding him, translating the incomprehensible into something his mind could process. He saw the enemy's history, a species so old that stars had been born and died during their existence. They had watched civilizations rise and fall across countless galaxies. They had grown weary of the cycle, the endless repetition of species that conquered, destroyed, and eventually consumed themselves. They had become judges, executioners, pruning the galaxy of species that showed the familiar signs of self-destruction. Humanity had been marked for elimination. Too aggressive, too expansionist, too dangerous. But Thessera had changed something. The enemy had expected humans to sacrifice the weak for the strong. Every other species did. It was the logical choice, the evolutionary imperative. Instead, humans had sacrificed the strong for the weak. They had accepted devastating losses to save those who offered nothing strategically. The enemy didn't understand it. And what they didn't understand they couldn't predict. For the first time in eons they were curious. Elias felt their question press against his mind. Why? He answered with the only truth he knew. Because we don't fight for survival. We fight for each other. We fight for the ones who can't fight for themselves. We fight because giving up would mean losing what makes us human. Silence. The alien presence processed his words for what felt like hours. Then, slowly, a response formed, not in words but in images. He saw human colonies scattered across the galaxy. He saw them not as threats to be eliminated, but as seeds to be watched. He saw the enemy pulling back, withdrawing their fleets, leaving humanity's space untouched. Not an alliance. Not a treaty. Something stranger and more profound, a recognition. The armor translated the final message. We will watch. Prove yourselves worthy of the stars. The presence withdrew. The communication channel fell silent. Elias stood alone, trembling with exhaustion. Around him, the council erupted into chaos, celebrating, arguing, demanding explanations. But he heard none of it. The armor pulsed softly against his skin, almost affectionately. Its voice echoed one last time in his mind. Trials complete. Humanity is worthy. Elias closed his eyes. The weight of the armor felt different now, not like a burden but like a promise. Humanity had arrived among the stars. They had been tested by an ancient relic that had rejected every species for centuries. They had faced an enemy older than recorded history and convinced them to pause their judgment. The galaxy would never look at them the same way again. And somewhere, in the vast darkness between stars, watchers who had grown weary of the endless cycle of destruction found themselves curious for the first time in millennia. Curious about a small, fragile species that refused to abandon its own. Curious about humanity.